Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the DCU Experience. We are here for episode number 3. Today, we're talking about a bunch of different things. Lobo is in the DCU now. We have Jason Momoa returning to play one of his favorite characters. This has been in the works for seemingly a decade, and it's finally happening. We got Batman alive in the DCU for the first time in the Creature Commandos episode today, and there's a whole bunch of other news that we're going to be talking about. Of course, I've got everybody that you want to see with us. I've got Nick, Crisis, and True still doesn't have a camera. Before we get started, would like to say that this podcast is sponsored by GamerSupps. If you'd like to save 10% on your GamerSupps order, go to gamersupps.gg/keyissues to do all that. Everybody, how are we feeling? Are we feeling good with this Batman, with this Lobo action? Is everyone happy?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, that's a unanimous yes. So let's just get right into it then. We have Jason Momoa, who has confirmed that he is going to be playing Lobo, the interstellar bounty hunter, with quite an edge to him. He does a lot of swearing. It is a bunch of fake swear words, so that's something James Gunn's very familiar with Rocket Raccoon. Let's get our initial thoughts. Nick, what do you think about Jason Momoa returning, 1, returning as a second character, 2, and returning as Lobo, number 3?
I guess I will answer these in the order that you assigned
Preferably,
them.
yes. Thank you.
Yeah. 1, I'm good with him returning. Good to see him getting work. You know, money's tight. Inflation is crazy. So glad he has a job. Returning as Lobo, great, fantastic, love it. He's stated multiple times that he's a big fan of the character. He's kind of been championing for this role for a number of years. And you know what? I think it's nice when people get the things that they want. So he got something. You know, they were like, hey, we're sorry. We made you do Aquaman and Aquaman 2. So now we'll let you do this other thing that sounds fun. And I forgot the third question, so I don't know the answer to that one. Just as a guy, like as a dude, he's good. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, yeah, I'm really hoping they kind of go over the top with him. You know, don't just have him be a normal dude. Have him kind of be Looney Tunes-esque in the way that he kind of a guy character. But yeah, I'm really happy for him and for us as well.
I worry a bit because, like, the limited amount of Lobo comics that I've read are incredibly like quirky and zany, especially the art style. I wonder if the people who, I don't know, maybe this is going to sound stupid, but I know that there's a very what's the term I want to use? Overly serious like group of DC fans that like loves to, we know what we want, and it's the most grimdark thing on earth, you know. And I don't know if they're gonna get like that. Lobo isn't that. He's closer to like a Deadpool level of absurdity than he is like grimdark, you know, ultra violent. I'm gonna say just Snyderverse kind of character thing, you know.
He's way
That's
more
what I'm getting at, you know.
You know, he's way more the Mask than he is the Punisher, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
So, but that section of the fan base has been kind of DC's fault a little bit. We can't blame it all on the fans, because if you ask, you know, the general public, they'll be like, oh, you know, Marvel is the happy-go-lucky and DC are these are the dark, gritty stories. It just has not been the case outside of Batman, right? Everybody else makes you smile for the most part when you're reading them. Not saying I don't smile when I read Batman comics, but it's not the same type of vibe, right?
There's a disclaimer on the front page of every Batman comic that tells you not to smile when you
Do
read them.
not
You're still
smile.
smiling, dude.
Yeah.
or we will find you and we will break your
Hold on,
legs.
I'm actually gonna text Scott Snyder. I know that you've been.
I was smiling. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
I'm really excited to see him in Supergirl specifically because we're just going to get to see him against one of the top characters in the universe from the beginning. And as a power scaling pilled person, that's something that I'm incredibly interested in seeing how that plays out. I'm assuming that he and Supergirl are going to be pretty close to the same power level, but it will be interesting to see how they go about that because so far from what we've gotten, if we consider like the Peacemaker, the Suicide Squad, Blue Beetle, and Creature Commandos to be like the core of the universe thus far, all the action has been incredible, and now we're finally going to get to be able to let loose with two characters we know are incredibly powerful characters within the DC universe. So that's something I'm really excited for. I know a lot of people were kind of disappointed that it wasn't like Superman he was going up against first, but there are some people that are like speculating maybe the person that we see fight Superman in his movie is also Lobo, but I don't see that happening. Crisis, do you see that happening? And what do you think about Lobo fighting Supergirl specifically?
I do not think he will be in. I don't think Lobo will be in the Superman movie. Maybe a tease at most. We know that Momoa, he did a cryptic at the time, like Instagram live video where he was like, "Oh, I just got the best call ever," and that was like a couple years ago. I want to say maybe a year and some change. So I don't know if that's enough time to say he's like filmed a cameo or something for Superman. I don't think he's fighting Superman. But as far as Supergirl, I went back and watched his first two introductory episodes in the Superman animated series. That's kind of how I refreshed my Lobo knowledge. But yeah, I think it'll be good. I also agree that the tone they should take, he should definitely be more of a Deadpool mask combination character. Some people, I actually haven't read Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. I think once that movie inches more close, I'll sit down and give that a read. But people have been speculating that Lobo, Tom King, who wrote that comic, said that at first he envisioned it being a Supergirl Lobo story, and then his editors, kind of instructed him otherwise. And people are imagining that. I think there's like a bounty hunter type character in the Supergirl comic that they're most logically going to replace with Lobo. It seems like that was Nick's first instinct as well when he heard about the news about his inclusion. But otherwise, to say I am excited. I'm excited to see him. He seems to be a natural fit, and I think he will have more fun playing that character than he did Aquaman. I think it's like he's pretty much going to be playing himself. Most of the time, it seemed like when he was Aquaman, he was just trying to play Lobo anyway. Like there's that shot in Aquaman 2 where it's just a slow-mo gratuitous shot of him cutting donuts in his motorcycle, and it's like, is this in an Aquaman script? Like,
you should be cutting donuts on a dolphin in the ocean, bro. Like you're the king of the seas. But yeah, I think I agree. That's going to be the role for him to really let loose and just be himself. But it is sort of like a downgrade, don't you think, in terms of like character, not character quality, but the level of character. You're going from like a core Justice League member to like a guy that kind of sometimes shows up. Do you think that Jason cares about that at all, or he just wants to come in and fight Superman and Supergirl and just be happy to be there? There's also not the pressure of like leading your own franchise, but that's kind of what all movie stars want at the end of the day.
I don't
think that he gets.
So I was gonna say, I don't think there'd be any pressure because Lobo is a character that people kind of know of. He's like, if you ask people have heard of Lobo, they've seen him.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're bringing in a character that no one's ever heard of, but you're not forced to be doing like these serialized things like an Aquaman that you would have had to if you were leading that franchise, where he can probably come in as a cameo for this movie, show up in another cameo for a different movie type of thing. So he's just way more flexible in what he can do as an actor as well.
I also think that's where Lobo shines the best. I don't know how you guys feel, but I really like when he pops in, causes some mayhem, and then dips out. I do really enjoy his solo comics, but they're a completely different beast. Like they are so out there and crazy and insane that it's like to really entrench people into like Lobo's corner of the universe would be like a thing in and of itself. And I really think if Lobo were to ever have something that would be like solo Lobo, I think a Lobo series would be a lot of fun, because that's something like James Gunn, for instance, could just take and have Lobo do whatever out in the corners of space and just be an absolute batshit crazy time. And I think if you were going to take Lobo, introduce him here in the Supergirl movie, and then use him elsewhere, I think that would be probably the best way to go. But I would absolutely love to see a Jason Momoa Lobo, like either animated series or live action. Like that would be the perfect place for him, not necessarily like leading his own film.
Yeah, I would also probably posit, considering he played Aquaman in, Dawn of Justice briefly, two versions of Justice League. They called him back to do reshoots, and then two of his own solo movies.
Hey,
Peacemaker
don't forget,
cameo.
yeah, don't forget Peacemaker. Yeah. That's big time. And the
Peacemaker
Flash cameo.
And he cameoed in the Flash movie. So
Seems
he's
reliable.
played Aquaman, more than anyone in this call, surely.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Drew's a
so
close
I
second,
think,
but
Yeah.
a couple stage plays that he doesn't want us to talk about, but yeah, no, I think a character like Lobo, and like you were saying, he could show up in a Green Lantern thing. I think the inevitable Lobo, Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion scene is gonna tear up a theater. It's gonna be that's already super funny to imagine. But yeah, no, I think, and also Jason Momoa was part of an imperative that has been long going, a near century long imperative to make Aquaman seem cool. And
Yeah.
whereas Lobo is just pretty cool anyway, so even if you don't know him, if you took someone who's never heard of either character and you show him Aquaman, he's gonna say, okay, he's probably, yeah, it's kind of lame. But Lobo, he's pretty cool. He's a biker dude, he beats up people. So I
has
think
a chain, a hook, like
he's got a
it's just
chain. He smokes massive cigars. So I think, in that sense, he might feel a little liberated that he doesn't have to, be part of that reinvention of a character. He can just embody them, and probably, I mean, if we think about like perfect casting, it is probably like an RDJ level insofar as the real life influencing the character. Tony Stark was he was on the wrong side of alcoholism, and then so was RDJ going to the role. And I mean, it just seems like he is Lobo. It just seems like the two entities will become one.
Is this the Momoa renaissance that we all deserve to see? That's what I want to know. And also, is this going to make like Aquaman more of a square? Like if we go back to traditional Aquaman, he doesn't have the tattoos anymore. He's not Jason Momoa. We're probably going to lose the long hair. We're going to lose some of the badass factor, right? And they're going to have to kind of build that character back up and like convince people like, okay, we brought in Khal Drogo, who's probably the most badass character like in anything that you could watch on TV that everybody knows about from the biggest show in the world. We got that guy, and we're going to make him Aquaman. We're going to make him an islander. We're going to give him the tattoos. He's going to do like the haka thing. Now it's just undoubtedly this guy's a badass. You don't mess with Aquaman. He'll kick your ass. He had amazing fight scenes. And now we're going back to traditional Aquaman, presumably. Like they're probably not going to cast like Roman Reigns or The Rock as Aquaman. That would be kind of awkward.
Definitely.
But
I mean, they could do Roman.
I think they could too.
Everything,
that would be pretty badass.
I mean, so far everything I've seen in the DCU is kind of lending itself pretty traditional to how they actually looked throughout the bronze and copper, the bronze-ish modern copper age of comics. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they, kind of casted somebody who looks more similar to Aquaman, mostly because they want to differentiate from the version that we have that was a little bit more grimdark in the in the Snyderverse. But other than that, I mean, I think Aquaman's stock with the average person isn't as bad as we think it is. I think Aquaman is a pretty cool character that most people, I would say, even like, I don't think that the joke is quite as bad as comic book fans make it out to be. But in the pantheon of like greatest casting choices of all time, casting Jason Momoa as Lobo is just like, that's an easy layup. Nobody's on your side of the court, man. You're shooting wide open. So I'm excited to see what he does. I don't really think from the perspective of what his real life, like, kind of boisterous personality seems like, that he could possibly mess this up. Outside of the writing could be weird, but because Lobo has been like, don't write him like the New 52. Don't do that.
Whatever you do, don't.
But if you write him as virtually any other depiction of him except that version, you're good.
Yeah.
So, and that, I mean, I think that's kind of what we need out of the same thing in Aquaman. It's like, if you know, I think what James is doing, at least from my perspective, is he's picking the versions of characters, or he's basing these versions of characters off of kind of what the majority of the fan base views as like the quintessential version of that character. And I think that you're probably going to end up getting a version of Aquaman that's closer to like maybe how he's been presented since the New 52, which I think is kind of the point when most people were like, oh, Aquaman's actually kind of tight. But I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think
I'm excited
they
to see.
might,
I'm excited to see an intergalactic motorcycle, though. I really think that Marvel really dropped the ball by not including one of those at all anywhere. So,
I'm just worried about, because honestly, I kind of disagree with
worried.
the way that like Aquaman is perceived prior to Jason Momoa, and I think people like just slide back into that, especially people that are born to hate. But I think the character is kind of just, you need to do something to make him cool, just generally. And the Jason Momoa factor being lost, I think, hurts that a little bit. But I honestly don't know how soon we're going to even get into Aquaman regardless. So I don't know how much that matters. But even in the comics, they sort of changed him a little bit to be more Momoa-esque, right? They gave him longer hair. He had tattoos, the beard, and he's had beards on and off. But I mean, you back to the 90s, they cut his arm off, they gave him a hook, and again they gave him that like metal look to try and make him cooler. And the New 52, he was back to his like classic look, but I think Jeff Johns did a pretty good job of like making him like regal, badass, and like a threat in that. But that obviously didn't reach the general public. But they did the same thing with Namor in the MCU. Like, they gave him a way cooler backstory, in my opinion, and they just gave him a twist that just made him way more badass. Like, he had the headdress, he had the cool powers, like the flying ankles wasn't like dorky. I think if they went like traditional Namor, that guy's getting laughed out of the theater. But they modernized the character in a way that reflected, I think, what modern audiences want to see, which is this sort of ancient, powerful character that comes from this like sort of Aztec background. So you have all of that like mystery and power built into the character. And we're going to get Atlantis, obviously. But how is that Atlantis going to be depicted? Is it going to be like the DC Extended Universe, where it's like an ultra futuristic, basically space planet from Star Wars? Or is it going to be something more traditional? That's what I'm curious to see. I do think they need to do something to make the character endear himself to modern audiences. And also he needs to differentiate himself now from Namor, who is in the more popular franchise as it stands currently.
I think you go off the DCEU, no, AU, wrong one, the DCAU Aquaman, where he did have the long hair and the beard, and he was more, he felt a little bit like Odin, kind of, in that depiction, where he's the ruler, and you know, he had the factions within fighting with the factions without fighting. It's going to be hard to design a new Atlantis, because I did kind of like the DC EU's Atlantis. I can't lie. I thought it was a really cool design. In this one, maybe you lean way more towards like them being part of nature. You know, and I think anything done well, people will accept. Because there's very few ideas that I look at and I'm like, man, nobody will ever accept that. There's a couple.
You guys
Not
like
that many.
the DCEU version of Atlantis?
I liked it, yeah.
I thought the
Garrick,
DCEU Atlantis was cool. Yeah, I mean, you take a look at the world building of the DC Extended Universe. Atlantis was probably some of the best world building in the DC Extended Universe. You had the 7 kingdoms. They were all very interesting. They were all very diverse and different from one another. You had the mystery.
No, I'm not talking about the kingdoms. I'm talking about like the general vibe of it. Kind of felt more like underwater Wakanda, and I did not vibe with it like
Well,
whatsoever.
I mean, that's what
I was
Atlantis is,
maybe
right?
super
maybe I'm
high-tech.
like maybe I'm literally just born to hate, but I did not like it at all.
It's not traditional because it doesn't feel ancient. It feels futuristic.
Yeah, exactly.
Different vibe. I did enjoy it from a visual aspect and the world build aspect, but it didn't feel like this is an ancient kingdom with ancient technology. Usually, ancient technology is big blocks.
I also did not like how it was shot comparatively to other things, and this is a problem that I'm not sure that the MCU fixed as well either with their version of Talokan, which was there was a lot of really soft edges. Everything looked a bit blurry when they were underwater. Like, I don't know. I didn't like the whole vibe. I like it. Fix it.
I mean, it
Do
looked
something
very
different.
fake as well, right? Like it was
Run it
so
by me,
futuristic. It was
James. Have your people call me. I'll storyboard some stuff with you. We'll get it straightened out.
Yeah, fix it up real quick.
But yeah, I mean, their technology was, I mean, it was ancient, but it was also futuristic at the same time because like before like the dawn of man, they were already ahead of where like the people were in modern day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They had like a utopia that exceeded technology in 2020 in
I just
like
think when you
year
have
20.
too many I just think when you have too many societies that are in close proximity to Earth, and then Earth feels like kind of, I guess the way I'm trying to phrase it is like, if you think about maybe say the DCU version of Atlantis having like underwater space shuttles and laser beams and all this random shit, and then there's also and then in Marvel they have Guardians of the Galaxy that has a whole other universe with the Kree and everything that's going on, and then you go like back to like the first 2 years of the MCU and they're still like flip phones. And you're like, what's going on? Something doesn't track. But
the DCU.
I hope that this verse is a little bit comes out the gate a little bit more interwoven with that stuff, so it doesn't feel out of place. Because like the underwater, there was like underwater railway systems and stuff like that I remember in Aquaman. I'm a certified Aquaman DCEU hater, both of them. The second one was like one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life.
Cringe.
No,
The first one's awesome, bro.
The first one was good. Come on. First one was definitely
Is it like
certified hater?
a
Certified
good
hater, dude.
like story?
No.
It's not, but it's fun. It's a fun movie. It's got great action, and it's got Jason Momoa going, hell yeah,
yeah, brother.
Yeah,
Listen, when the final fight when he says, "May the
come
judge,"
on, when he like
puts
puts the trident in front of him and like uses his telepathic powers for the first time, like calls the whole
entire last scene.
You weren't
is so
standing
good.
up and like clapping, like losing your mind. Like that was.
The
I was
shot
like,
of them
what is
underwater?
Infinity War? What is Endgame? I have Aquaman, baby. That's all I need. I have.
Gross.
You're gonna have to rewatch that one. Nah, you're gonna have to
like
change
it.
that
He
opinion
said,
real quick.
"Fish Vengers assemble," and everyone went crazy. Yeah, it was.
Crisis,
Everyone
can you
clapped.
please back me up? This was shit, right?
Well, I think one of the ways
We're
that
off on
you
a
would
hard tangent, by the way. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
No,
I'm
it's
bringing
cool.
it back. I'm bringing it back. One of the ways that you would distinguish old Aquaman, from the new going forward, is just a more solid script. And I think while Momoa gave an austere of like badassery because kind of what we knew him from Game of Thrones and his prior roles, I think the difference is those movies didn't take it seriously. It didn't take being a king seriously. It didn't take having to manage all of these different cultures within Atlantis itself seriously. And
I felt like there was a very big tonal shift between these films where they didn't know how much comedy they wanted to be versus how much they wanted to be serious, and the character across multiple different things that he was in was just, I don't know, it was weird. But
Well, I think
Anywho,
in-
he's gone. He's Lobo now. We're about to do space drinking and smoking. It's gonna be sick.
I think in doing so, in taking him seriously and going more with what I would like to see, which is like a King Arthur type, storyline set in Atlantis. But then I also think, and there's some interesting implications that we've gotten from this episode of Creature Commandos as far as the wider universe. In the first two movies in the DCEU, they make a point to say Atlantis does not really interact with the normal world, the above sea life and society. So I think that's a way that you can physically and maybe kind of cross that threshold that you're talking about, Nick, where it just feels like they're too desperate and weird. Where if the Atlantis going forward, if maybe this is an Aquaman who's kind of already exposed, or we have Superman flying around, we have Green Lanterns, like Atlantis to this Earth probably wouldn't be that much to buy. I don't see a reason why it has to be a hidden civilization anymore, and I think that could be a big way where we never really got Aquaman, King of Atlantis, also human, has to be a monarch that can have peace and ease tensions between the two. We never got that, so I think that's maybe a way that you could distinguish it from what came before. Is if you take that seriously, you say this is a superhero, but he also is somebody who has to, in a way that Superman doesn't, because he's an ambassador of a lost civilization. Aquaman can be an ambassador of a currently existing civilization. And it could also kind of be allegorical to, how we kind of all have to get along in the real world, and seeing a superhero kind of fight for that.
Yeah, when they all fight, it'll be allegorical to how we don't get along in the real world.
Exactly. But we can all dream that after the blows are traded, we can all get along.
Yes, sir. And then
Yep.
we already have like a connections to Atlantis, which is cool. We have King Shark, right? Who is a shark god, as far as we know. That's all we know. And then Nina could, in some way, be tangentially connected. We don't know yet, but we're going to see her backstory in the next episode. We saw in the preview after this most recent Creature Commandos episode, which I think maybe was my favorite episode of the season thus far. We got Dr. Phosphorus's backstory, and I know Alan Tudyk, before the season started, likened it to Mystic River. Is that my daughter in there? Sort of stuff. And I think like it does honestly get to that level of like emotional impact. Maybe not necessarily hitting you in the same way just because it's not, set up similarly. But maybe if we saw that in live action and we started Dr. Phosphorus was the main character, you would sort of feel that deep emotion that you do in Mystic River. But I absolutely love how they went about the backstory here, establishing him as a character that's just lost everything and has every reason to become a villain. And honestly, I think if any one of us were in that situation, would we have it within us to act differently and be more noble and be more heroic given these sort of godlike powers? Or would you just immediately go after the four dudes that brutally murdered your daughter and wife and ruined your life?
I can tell you that I for sure would kill almost immediately,
Yeah,
with
same.
no hesitation or remorse, and immediately pivot to a life of crime. Frankly, I'm kind of considering pivoting to a life of crime now, and I don't have any powers. So, yeah, sign me up.
I really loved how serious this episode was, because a lot of it is kind of jokey, but the fact that they were able to turn that switch around, and this was the scene with his wife and kid were pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Like making him like rub his hands on them so he could have the DNA. That's like, yeah. And for it to work as well as it did, I'm really happy with the episode. I think super cool.
Yeah, I think that bringing in that sort of strand of the DC universe, that being Gotham, in this way was especially well done. We got to see Gotham a little bit, the gargoyles, the dark scenery and all that. It looks pretty cool. But bringing in Rupert Thorne as somebody that's not even like considered to be one of those top tier mobster types within Gotham, compared to people like Maroni or Falcone, right? And just showing how brutal Gotham can be and how unforgiving it can be as a place, especially if you get yourself tangled up with the wrong sort of people. You have Dr. Phosphorus trying to do something noble, but going about it potentially in the wrong way by getting this funding from Rupert Thorne, and Rupert was going to sell all of this information to foreign entities that could use it against the United States or use it to harm people, like Bialia, which is this sort of fascist regime that the secrets were being sold to. So he does do the noble thing in preventing that from going out, but then Gotham shows its true face and how disturbing and disgusting it can be at the end of the day, which I think is the perfect way to introduce Gotham as sort of a living, breathing entity in and of itself, and not necessarily just like introducing Batman characters, but just showing the depravity that is Gotham itself. And then you get this noble character, Dr. Phosphorus, who immediately turns to a life of crime and becomes a murderous villain himself and entrenches himself in, you know, the way that Gotham functions, and decides, I'm just going to go all in on this. I'm going to take all of Rupert's illegal things that he's doing, and I'm just going to run it myself. Instead of getting revenge, he sort of double downs and truly becomes a villain, which I thought was really interesting.
One thing I think about, one of the things that the episode kind of helped me realize is that I think that there is a lot of room within Batman's rogues galleries for new characters to shine, and shine in this type of way. Phosphorus has a good bit of comic book appearances, and none of them are super lengthy from what I can recall. I'm still working my way through a lot of them. But I think that there's room for characters like this to appear in shows, appear in films, where we don't always have to go back to the same couple characters in every single animated project. Or, you know, a lot of times we use the same characters. You know, writers want to put their stamp on a character. That's the first thing they do when they, you know, start writing a character. And there, it just kind of goes to show, if you take the core elements of something and you see a little bit of a spark, a little diamond in the rough there, you know, the right writer can make something pop. And I think this kind of really all it did for me is that there's surely some, you know, some wacky parts throughout the show and even in this episode, but I think there's a lot of room there for a really, really menacing, really terrifying character to show up in a live action film somewhere, whether it's a Batman film alone, a team up movie, you know, something. I think I would love to see that in live action.
I think it was a cool case study. Just a little slice.
Oh, you studied it?
Yeah, extensively in the past, you know,
I'd
24
love to
hours.
review your notes.
Had to.
I'll show you later. But no, yeah, it's just how bad Gotham can treat somebody in just a very short amount of time. Just a very truncated look at you know, someone who's not even a big Batman villain. You have to imagine what does this universe's Riddler or Joker or Scarecrow look like if this is the origin story of someone like Dr. Phosphorus. And I also think very interesting, you know, we talked last week about the lore implications, the world building that's kind of been subtly introduced here, but and it might just be creative, but I found it very interesting how, and this is, we don't know how long Phosphorus has been, you know, I think that he is in Belle Reve. I think that is where all of them were shoved into the creature commandos. So we don't know how long he's been in there necessarily. We don't know if this is a flashback from 10 years ago. I'm not sure if we have that information. You know, how novice is this Batman that we see in the you know, scene there. But as soon as the lights go out and as soon as people start noticing Batman, everybody's scared.
Yeah.
We hear women, we hear, you know, grown men, the mobsters are scared. Everybody's afraid of Batman. And again, that could just be creative, but I find that very interesting to think, you know, maybe not that long ago in the current day of the DCU, he is still like an urban legend, which you know, they've never committed to that in the movies because I think it might just be too hard to keep going. But I mean, there are stories set in like modern day, maybe a few years ago, but further along, like Dick Grayson's Nightwing, Tim Drake is Robin, like that far along, and there are still people in Gotham who don't necessarily believe Batman's real. Just like how nowadays it's like people speculate their conspiracy theories every which way about everything.
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot. Yep. Case in point. But yeah, there are people who they might not even believe he's real at that point. So I just think that's very interesting.
Did you say the haircut, Drew?
Yeah.
That's another urban legend that just simply does not exist. But no, I agree with you. Seeing Batman have that sort of presence. What's also interesting is like these people work for like Dr. Phosphorus, the like radioactive guy that could destroy tanks and like melt through entire buildings, and they see Batman and they're like, shit, we're cooked, bro.
It's never been more over.
Yeah, and he looked huge. True. What did you think of Gotham and Batman more specifically?
Me, I like big men, and I really liked how he looked, on the shot of the window.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for the Batman. Now I don't know how accurate that would be to that, to their final depiction, if he's going to be heavily suited up or anything like that. But I really like the introduction. Just the dirtiest city you've ever seen type of place. And I also like how all the villains we see, all the mobsters, they're all still using low tech stuff. But we know in Metropolis, for example, they have pretty high-tech stuff, right? So I wonder if that's going to be a distinction between the two different cities where, Metropolis is the city of the future. So maybe the regular cops have more advanced tech.
Yeah, they have like flying suits in Polkistan or whatever that country's called from. I always
just
forget
the
it.
disparity of like wealth, right? All of the mobsters hoarding it all.
That's always been a thing, though. The mobsters, either rich people are using Tommy guns.
The cops are like, the mobsters are like, it's the bat, and they fire a gun like a revolver.
Yeah,
and I love that. I love that Gotham, Metropolis, Star City, they all are on the same planet, but they still kind of feel like sub-worlds, of each other. I've always thought that was something special about DC. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Dr. Phosphorus thus far has been a super fan favorite. He's been one of my favorite characters from the beginning. I feel like Alan Tudyk has gotten to chew the scenery up a lot more than other characters. I think he and the Bride have had the most. And what do you think of the Bride and Nina's little side adventure in this episode? I thought it was really significant, not just in their development as characters that are becoming closer friends, but also in the world building aspects of the universe. We just have like two random metahumans in Pokolistan who show up to this brothel and start causing trouble, and the Bride's got to go at them, and obviously the Bride is just treats them like they're nothing, completely destroys them, so she's obviously on the higher end. But we just have metahumans, and they exist, and they walk around, and it's just a thing. Like Dr. Phosphorus shows up with these other two metahumans, and I think it just makes the world feel even more like expansive and lived in, and that's what you want to feel, at least for me, when I pick up the comics. It's like I don't need an explanation for every little guy, and like how, like I feel like in Marvel or in the old DC Extended Universe, I'm talking about like the movie universes specifically, I feel like we would have to get some explanation within the thing about how these guys got their powers and why they have their powers. And it's just these guys have powers and they fight the Bride and get killed brutally. Like, we don't need any more information, right?
We don't need to explain the metagene. I don't need a metagene backstory movie. It's just a thing that happens. Some people just have powers. It does make the world feel way more fantastical. Mm-hmm. That's the word, right? Where it feels like a fantasy world where, there are just some things that maybe somebody knows, but we don't, and we don't need to know it for the story to exist, and there will just be random people. I assume there'll be mobsters as well with just powers in the world. I think it's really cool. Subtle, not really that subtle, but really cool world building. I think that's the best thing that I've liked about Creature Commandos so far is they're telling their story, but they're building the world out with everything that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, every single week it's something more I appreciate about how the show is being written and why it's doing its job as quote unquote the first thing in the DC universe, although we've had a little bit before that's being grandfathered in. But if you're coming in and this is your first thing, I think it's doing an excellent job of establishing these different corners of the universe in very quickly, giving you the information you need to know, while also being sure to focus on the characters that are in the show. And then next week we have the finale, and we were talking about last week, we need more, we want more, we need more. And we're getting to the point where now things are coming to a head. And personally, I feel pretty good going into this final episode. I kind of know what we're going to get. Frankenstein is going to team up, right? I assume that Rick Flag is going to wake up and spill the beans on Clayface. And potentially we're going to get some setup for a Legion of Doom, right? We're going to have Clayface, who's working with Cersei, who's working with Gorilla Grodd, who could potentially be working with Lex Luthor, and then we're getting straight into Superman. So I think we're at the point where things are starting to come into focus a little bit more, at least for me. How do you guys feel after the conversation we had last week with the new episode and going into the final one?
Allow me to hate for a couple seconds.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Our resident hater.
I'm kidding.
Nick, I will put you full screen. The floor is yours.
I actually do feel a little bit more comfortable. I don't know how realistic my expectations can be for, something like this. I do still feel I would like for this season to be just a little bit longer, because it could have got us a little bit more backstory, a little bit more time with these characters. But the thing that you bring up here is I'm starting to kind of see the vision a little bit more than I did before. These backstory, the episodes I think shine the most when they focus on the character's backstory. And the main present plot is just kind of bonus to me right now, I guess is the best way to put it. The main plot of the story isn't, super captivating to me, but everything that is contained within it is pretty good, like these little backstories and bits. And I think it is building towards something where between the finale of this season, the next season, and however they work these characters into other projects here and there is really going to kind of set the tone for how the DCU flourishes. And I don't need everything to tie into everything else. I don't need to see every thumbnail every week saying Easter eggs in a circle with 9 arrows pointing to it, or 78 things you missed. But it does feel good to start getting some closure and some more explanation on some of these characters. So I'm slightly happier than I was before, which certainly made me feel like a certified hater after the last episode.
Crisis True, thoughts on going into the finale? Are you feeling pretty good? Feeling still a little shaky, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will definitely be some pretty obvious hanging cliffhangers or whatever going into it. I think right. I think Amanda Waller, if we are getting her show, it feels kind of unlikely. I'm not sure how that could be distinct enough from a hypothetical, or going into Creature Commando Season 2 or Peacemaker Season 2. I'm sure she'll be a big player in both of those, so I'm not sure if that show is still happening. But whatever we're going to get, it's going to be Rick Flag is going to reveal something. We're going to learn that Cersei's been lying, and it's much more of a grander conspiracy than what. So far, the show has been a very simple plot when you think about it. It's just go kill this person, now, and then a few episodes ago it was protect this person. It's just been very, very much a simple story, and then we're getting the characters' backgrounds interspersed. But I think it's going to get a lot more complex. I guess that would be my biggest worry, is the show is going to kind of feel, not too conclusive, but it is inherently season 1. I'm not sure how much better it would be if we knew that the whole time going in, but we do now. So it's just a question, I guess, to see if every character on the table, pretty much, I think we're all satisfied. Maybe we should save that for the finale. But everybody but Nina, obviously, I would say I am satisfied with how they've been explored and characterized so far. So it's a question of if they can stick the landing or possibly, wreck the whole thing, especially if Cersei has not been fooling anybody, and she just got her ass beat by Weasel, outright. That would be pretty disappointing.
Let's not do that one.
It always goes back to the Weasel
The
ass beating.
Weasler.
Yeah.
True, give us your thoughts.
I might just be bad at watching stories because I'm not actually sure what's going to happen in this episode. So maybe I'm
and reading them.
Yeah,
I can't
mean,
read. But...
I'm just throwing out like complete guesses. I could be totally wrong, but yeah.
Because for me, I'm like, oh, Cersei must show up in the final episode, right? But she just actually might not. She might not. So who knows? But yeah, I'm happy with where we've gotten. This seems like to be an introduction to these characters, so I assume we'll probably stick with the same 4 characters for the next season, which then probably we can go into a little bit more of a complex plot. So I'm happy with what we've got, but I'm really want some more. I don't know if I'm quite satisfied yet. I'm still hungry for some.
If we
some
do
more
see
content.
Cersei again, I think potentially we could see her potentially breaking out with the help of Clayface, assuming they're working together, right? Because Clayface or the professor, which one showed up and spoke about Cersei earlier? Do you think that was Clayface or do you think that was the professor?
It was probably the professor,
Yeah,
because he didn't have the weird eccentricities that Clayface showed in the college scene.
And then Clayface pulled up as a professor, so assuming was using that to get closer to Cersei. But I think we'll know a little bit more. If we don't, we don't. But I think it'll wrap up pretty nicely. At least I'm optimistic about it. What do you guys think about season 2 potentially being live action? I've not heard that this could be a thing, but like, would that be cool if it was?
Pretty crazy experiment.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'd feel about it. I would want them to keep it animated because I like this style, and I think it's if the animation was like subpar or hard to watch, then I'd be like, okay, yeah, please do live action. But yeah, I'd want them to keep it animated actually.
Yeah, I mean, it is some of the best animated stuff that I've seen for like American television, I think, in the past couple years. Like comparing it to other big animated series that have come out, I think it's been very strong, especially the action.
Yeah.
But also the other thing is when you move something from being animated to live action, the cost just balloons. So he would have to have. I mean, there'd have to be a majorly justified reason to do that, especially with the amount of CGI it would take to do somebody like Phosphorus Justice or
the Bride,
Clayface,
all these
those types of
characters.
things. So your couple $1 million animated show with a tight team of animators would turn into a tens of potentially $100 million season with multiple studios working on CGI. So while it would be really cool, I would much rather see a select grouping of those characters show up in other projects in live action.
Peacemaker hopefully is a thing that they show up in.
Yeah,
right?
one of the things about the DCU is that I really was captivated by when he was first announcing it. That initial announcement was the ability to use the same versions of characters, same voice actors, things like that in multiple different types of media. So whenever they do ultimately get a Batman cast, maybe we will get a Batman game set in the DCU, created by developed by some competent studio, but voice acted by the same person that does the character in the films. Those types of things would, or maybe there someone up on high would bless me with a Green Lantern game or something like that, and that stuff carries over. But that's the kind of thing that I'd like to see. While it would be cool to answer your question, it'd be cool to see a second season like that. I doubt that it would happen. I think they would kind of distribute them more evenly across other projects to kind of get their money's worth out of it.
So looking forward to Peacemaker season 2, which I think is probably the next time we're gonna get a real look at these characters. Obviously, we know that Rick Flag Sr. will be in Superman. I doubt any of these other characters will be, but you never know. Could see a shot of them. We have no idea.
Maybe Cersei, if they are building a Legion.
Yeah.
Maybe Cersei and
Cersei, Clayface potentially, but the core like creature commandos, probably not going to see them until Peacemaker season 2. Is that something we're hoping Peacemaker will have to grapple with, this team that exists, or do you think he should be kept separate because he is no longer sort of a member of Task Force X? It's something that's been completely dissolved. Is he going to be a character that sort of operates under his own volition, or is he going to still be in with Waller? Because we're getting a bunch of things that are happening within the space that Amanda operates in that are changing frequently since the last time we saw Peacemaker. So how do you guys see Peacemaker sort of working in the next season?
No idea. I think he might end up working. Maybe he ends up working for another organization like Argus or something like that.
Could work under Rick Flag directly, or maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's, it all depends on what the fallout of this final episode looks like and how much of Peacemaker season 1 remains canon. Because he could show up and be in Task Force X and be like, yes, a lot of that didn't happen or something.
Yeah.
You never
we already
know
know
what
that
they
like
decide to
Task Force
retcon.
X was dissolved because of
Of course, because of
Peacemaker.
Creature Commandos telling us that, but you never know. So
I think they should
he will
keep
be
him as
shirtless
a-
in the season, though. We know that. That's a
Thankfully.
definite.
So I definitely think that just keep them as a loose cannon. If you're gonna have them be side characters and maybe a subplot or something. I think keep it as a Peacemaker show with a sprinkling of the Commandos.
But if you're
type
going
thing.
into Peacemaker's core cast is Harcourt, Peacemaker, Vigilante, Waller's
Economos.
daughter, and John Economos, right?
Mhm.
And John Economos still works for Waller. So that's
Yep.
just where, I think they'll probably bring in Economos to be in the second season. He was a main character of the show, but it's just all very interesting how this is going to play out and how it has played out thus far. My wheels are spinning, and it's just something that I want it now. I feel like I feel like Bilbo in Fellowship of the Ring, where I'm just like, I see a
It's,
taste of it, and I just want it.
The one thing we obviously don't have is a timeline for almost anything. Like, we know Peacemaker, Suicide Squad, and that's it, but we don't know when Blue Beetle or Superman take place. Like, whatsoever. We don't know when any of these flashbacks happen, so we don't kind of have like a timeline of the verse yet. And I remembered, because of Nick saying that, we could have a Batman game. It could be interesting because the Batman game doesn't need to be like a sequel to a movie, right? It could just be, oh, here's, Batman Year One type
Exactly.
thing. And
That's exactly what I was getting at. It's like you could tell any story in a large and expansive way. Like a movie, you have 2 hours max, maybe 2 hours and 20 minutes if it's, really good or really, or really long. In a show, at most, you're going to get between 8 and 10 hours. A video game, you're getting usually for this, just the story on most open world games, you're getting 20, 25 hours. So that's a lot of world building, a lot of time that you can spend developing characters and background stuff. And if done well, you could develop a crap load of stuff in a game.
Yeah.
I'm confident we're never going to get another Superman game, so it'd probably be
No.
Batman anyway.
I'm
but-
still
Stay
I'm still
strong,
holding out
brother.
hope.
Stay strong. I mean, you've got a long life to live, man. There's plenty of time. Plenty of time.
If the first game they announce is a Batman game, I'm leaving the podcast.
Well, we're
So
hoping
just-
it's
just-
Wonder Woman, right? We hope.
All
that
right, James, and
Wonder
don't let me
Woman
down.
game, the Wonder Woman game that has been delayed 50 times, is being retrofit into the DCU would be like the perfect
Yeah.
thing
It
to
would be
happen.
Interesting. Yeah, because if it's good, we get so much lore. You get
So
every,
much.
that's
You
the-
get codexes, you get character
Yeah.
profiles, and then you have like side missions, and like Themyscira
Item
will be
descriptions.
completely fleshed out. You get so much information, and then it would be amazing if that was like, okay, Superman's getting a movie, Batman's getting a movie, and Wonder Woman is just getting a video game. Like, that would be sick.
It would be super, because it might be delayed even further, because obviously they're going to do the prequel show, the
Mhm.
Amazons, with the tribes forming. They might need to we need to make sure these things line up type thing, so it might be delayed further. But if it gets delayed for that, why not? If
Worth
it's
it.
good content, I'll wait.
If
I'll
they
wait
told
for good
us
content.
that the Wonder Woman game is in the DCU, but we have to delay it 5 more years. Are you hyped or pissed off?
Listen, I've been waiting for
5
Skyrim
years is a long time. Let's
2011.
say
No, hold on. 5 years isn't a long time.
I guess we
you know?
haven't gotten
Yeah.
any information on it, but
Yeah, if
they're
they,
like,
if they
it's
say
coming
yeah,
out
it's delayed,
2030.
you can't really miss something you don't have, you know?
Yeah.
So we haven't seen anything about it. So it's not like we've seen a couple gameplay trailers and they're like, oh yeah, we got to take this one back to the drawing board. We got nothing except a title screen and I think one static image. So they can change whatever they want. I think we're all pretty good with it. I want to bring something up since we're talking about future projects and games and stuff. I think I wouldn't be surprised if between this film, the end of Creature Commandos and Peacemaker, if we start to get something also about maybe 1 or 2 members of the Authority as well. I think oftentimes we haven't really talked a lot about the Authority, but we know that the Engineers in Superman Legacy. So it would be cool we're going to have to start seeing more of those characters in places before they ultimately have the come together movie where we learn more about them. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know shit about the Authority, so I'm good. I'm gonna read all of it at some point, but I would like to start getting some of that stuff sprinkled in here and there too. Again, I know it's only the first project, but I wouldn't be surprised if between Peacemaker maybe we see an Easter egg here or something pop up. Just we know some of the characters that are in there.
I wonder if there have been Authority references that just no one has gotten, because the the only exposure I have from them was a little bit in the Superman and the Authority from like a couple years ago.
I made myself laugh. James comes out and he goes, guys, look, Wonder Woman's in the DCU. We're changing the game, and we heard what you were talking about with the Authority. We're making a mobile game. It's gonna be free to play.
Let's go.
Yeah, Authority gacha game.
You gotta recharge your energy to fight. It's pretty simple.
Oh man.
I think all of this entire conversation, and like I feel like we can have this conversation every week, but about new topics. It's just like our excitement level for potential things coming in the DC universe is incredible. And all of us being DC dudes, which hashtag DC dudes, is just it's perfect for us. We're like kids in the candy store every single week, and after Creature Commandos is done and over with, we'll be able to speculate even more because we have nothing to talk about other than that. But I'm sure obviously the Superman stuff is going to start churning. We're going to get more information about that as more trailers come out. Unfortunately for us, we're going to have to watch all those trailers, but hopefully, fingers crossed, they don't spoil the whole movie in the trailers as they come out. But really excited to see more of that. We've just only gotten a teaser thus far, and we just have so much more DCU to come, and we cannot wait for it. It's like being on the ground floor of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but knowing like it's gonna be the MCU, right?
Yeah.
So like imagine how excited you would be for Captain America and Thor and Iron Man, like knowing, hey, this is gonna lead into Avengers. This is gonna become a thing where this universe is just the comic books that we all know and love brought to life in not only film but a multimedia. And that's also the really exciting thing about the DC universe is the multimedia aspect of the potential comics that could be tie-in canon, the potential of video games being not just tie-ins, but major like pillars of the universe potentially. So it's just all super exciting.
And that, I mean, it's also a really smart way to get people into reading comics or graphic novels or whatever, if you were to say, hey, you know, have a big announcement, a trailer for a comic book, something that they put a lot of effort into, and say, hey, you want to learn about X character that's going to be or X series of characters, get a little bit of their background in this new graphic novel that's coming out. It helps, you know, kind of push forward the medium and get people into stores again that might not have been there otherwise. You know, we talked about this a lot on the old, you know, podcast when we were talking about the MCU. Is the MCU was popular. I mean, it was one of the biggest things from a movie standpoint of all time. Unlimited merchandise, unlimited character growth for a lot of these things, but it didn't really push comic sales very much at all. You know, books did not get bigger. The Batman was still the biggest book being sold every month. Spider-Man was still the biggest book being sold every month. And print runs didn't get larger. They didn't get, you know, I was seeing the same dudes at the same shops, the same conventions. It never really changed that much, but you want to find a way to kind of organize, you want to find a way to get people in, and not necessarily, I mean, I'm not trying to go crazy capitalist mode here, but you want to try to put stuff in front of them that they might actually want to consume. It might actually give them a reason to walk into a comic book store or a Barnes and Noble or whatever else. Borders still around? That's probably gone, but you know, whatever.
Convert those viewers into readers, right?
Yeah,
it's the worst thing about the MCU, like what that the DCU has been doing, just putting, hey, look at these comics you can buy at the end of these big trailers, right? Like,
yeah.
And we saw it did just work for the Supergirl. There's a couple of
prime example, perfect
yeah.
example. Woman of Tomorrow sold out. Batman and Robin sold out.
Even though that's
All-Star
not the right
Superman,
Batman,
they were all they were all trending on Amazon. All of them were selling out like crazy. People were reading them, you know.
Imagine,
and it gives the scalpers and the comic salesmen something to do as well.
It gives
sell
bread on the table. They're struggling,
Supergirl, Woman
they can't
of Tomorrow,
sell their PS5s, man. They got warehouses full of PS5s. Can't get rid of them.
It's the biggest waste. Imagine if there was a, hey, you can look at the original Infinity War story at the end of the Infinity War trailer, one of the biggest trailers at the time when it came out.
Yeah.
What an like that's free.
This could probably be its own discussion, but I think they should have, because they do it on YouTube occasionally and on Twitter, where they have a trailer for a comic.
Yeah,
and it's like a really well done, like, you know, they'll use Adobe After Effects and it'll look really cool. I think those should be in movies. I think DC should market their books alongside their movies, because I think that's like a whole line that people aren't really like. I don't know, I feel like the average person doesn't really know what they're gonna get. They don't know how the meta works, like when to pick up, how does it even work. Is it a new story every time? Is it the same story but the next part? Is it, because, you know, all those things are true. I mean, Batman's about to, you know, they're going back to Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb. Might as well be a new book, like. But I think if there were, you know, better promotions. Speaking about Batman, I'm not sure. Maybe this could also be its own episode, because it has become this sort of totemic conversation. And I feel like this episode of Creature Commandos, not sure how much longer we want to go here, but this episode of Creature Commandos definitely got most people to see that Robert Pattinson will not be the DCU Batman, just based on the character's appearance. And we know James Gunn is like, there's going to be some wiggle room, but this is what I was comfortable at the time putting out there. How do you guys generally feel? Do you think they should incorporate the Batman movie, its subsequent, you know, sequels, and the Penguin show? Should that be folded into this Creature Commandos Superman Legacy cinematic universe, or should they build their own Batman? And then also, based on what we know, do you think I feel like it's been pretty thoroughly debunked. I think we have enough evidence now to say that that's just not going to happen. There's not a lot of room for coping, especially with this latest episode and actually seeing Batman.
He's flat out said it multiple times. He said, like, this is going to be its own thing, and people are just desperate to shoehorn it into this universe. And you hear the same complaints online all the time where people go, well, isn't it going to confuse audiences? Do you get it? Because I get it. It's not very hard. Like, if you get it, it's a 2-second conversation for me to explain it to you. Yeah, it's a different thing. It's not in this universe. This is
are there people that think that, like, the Christian Bale Batman is a sequel to George Clooney because those were the last two? Like,
yeah, nobody thinks that. Like,
yeah,
you know, I don't know.
Every iteration of Batman is the continuation of Adam West.
It's the same guy.
Thing that
there
people,
can't be more than one version.
The confusing general audiences like line, I don't think has really been that that prevalent in society for probably 10 to 15
You know,
years.
the one time it was actually a thing was when they made Superman Returns, and they're like, "Wait, this is a sequel to the
Yeah.
second Superman movie
I-
with Christopher Reeve, and we're ignoring the other two, or like, what is happening? Is this a new guy?"
To be fair to that, though, the last Superman movie was Superman 4. So
that
at
was in
that
the
point,
80s, so it was like been like
yes.
25 years. So
Right. So that's also true. But again, it's like there really was only one cinematic Superman,
Yeah.
and Superman Returns was still kind of playing in that toy box. But we've had so many different Batman. We've had so many different Spider-Men. We've had multiple Fantastic Fours. You know, now we had a fan cast, Mr. Fantastic become canon. We
Yeah.
had Johnny Storm come back from the 2000s movies in Deadpool 3, and now all of them are getting new versions. That's all
Everyone
within the
gets it.
same
It's
like
a
5-year
multiverse,
span.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not confusing. It's just not.
But to answer
you
your
know.
question about like Batman coming into the new universe being different, do we want one? Do we want the other? I think you can make a case for both, for wanting
Yeah.
Robert Pattinson's Batman to be the new Batman, because that movie is so good and because the Penguin series is so good, and there's not too much that has been tapped into or enough of the universe that's been shown that you couldn't just be like, all right, we'll just fold it in. I can see both sides of the argument, and I would be fine with either. My preference would be a new one, but you've already taken the time to establish like a Penguin that's in like an all-timer. So like you can't use a Penguin in the DCU. Like I just don't think it's possible to do that, just because Colin Farrell's is so good and so distinct and just like the pitch perfect version of Oswald Cobblepot that has again been modernized for people in a way that they understand from like The Sopranos or Goodfellas or whatever, these sort of like mobster type characters. I think that was done so well that you kind of will have to avoid Penguin. But like Nick brought up earlier, so we have Dr. Phosphorus, and you have so many characters that you can mine and use that you don't need the writer to be like, I'm gonna write actually this 500th story about the Penguin is gonna be the definitive one, and I'm gonna be the one to change the character forever. And that does happen occasionally, but it doesn't happen often. And I don't think we need it. We don't need everyone to put, like Nick said, their stamp on that version of the character. So I could see Robert Pattinson's Batman being the Batman for this universe and absolutely loving it, because I love that version of the character, and I love what they've done with the world building, and I think it could fit seamlessly into something like this. Again, seamlessly without too many issues. But on the other side of the coin, I would love to have like a more comic booky Batman and a comic booky rogues gallery from Batman, which we've really never gotten. You can argue like the Burton and Schumacher movies maybe, but like we haven't gotten like very consistent tone of Batman or his rogues gallery that's been close to the comic books in any sort of capacity ever. And that's just something I want. And Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves' Batman is not that. It is, I think, a more stylized version of like Christopher Nolan's Batman. And I appreciate both, and I love both versions, Matt Reeves and Christopher Nolan's versions of Batman. But I do want that comic book version. And we didn't get it with Ben Affleck's either. That was not the Batman that we wanted to see. It was an older Batman, quote unquote, that had been active for a long time, but he has gone the way of murderer, and I don't want that. And his subsequent appearances, he didn't have a solo movie, he didn't have a show. It was really just like Batman showing up, giving the Flash advice kind of stuff. So yeah, I want Batman. I want the Rogues Gallery. I want Robin.
The cadre of supervillains.
I want the cadre of supervillains, and I want a dark creature of the night. I think is what we all want, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And I will say this: we talked about it the other day. Just to wrap this up here, I want the Joker again, and I want a comic book accurate Joker for once, just the first time. And I think the closest we've gotten is like Cesar Romero's like version, because that was the version in the comics at the time. But like silver, not like bronze, copper, modern age Joker just is just not existed ever on screen, and I just want to see it. That's it.
Final minus question. What color does that bat suit need to be in this time around in this universe?
Same color as your shirt, buddy. I'm a blue-gray believer.
Purple.
That's right, baby.
Yeah.
I do like the black with the purple on the inside of the cape. The Greg
Yeah.
Capullo, Scott Snyder design is sick. But I guess that harkens back to like the original Batman design. But yeah,
I want to see
that's
the
answer.
Arkham Asylum suit just done from the first game. Just make that real.
Yeah.
It's already a very good, realistic, insofar as like the textures and the fabrics and some of the bells and whistles, while very much being just a live action ish rendering.
Here's
I
a
don't want
smidge too
crazy
long for me.
armor. I don't want Arkham Knight armor. I don't
Definitely
want
not,
millions of different sliding plates that sort of inform underwear on the outside or a bat symbol.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
I
think
feel like
we're all in agreement.
we might get the tech because of how big he is. There's just no way he's that big normally, right?
Oh, he's that big.
Well,
You seen Alan Richardson?
Ben Affleck,
Richardson?
yeah, Ben Affleck was pretty big. Humans can get that big. It's
Unfortunately,
I'm that big.
they padded out. Yeah, Nick is that big. Show the people at home. But unfortunately, the Ben Affleck was a little too bloated, and that was because of the suit. But like, if you just have like a muscular dude, just give him something that's like a little thin and put some texture on it that maybe makes it have the appearance of being a little thicker. But like,
Yeah.
you can get a big guy to look big and shredded. I don't think that's too hard. I mean, you saw, if you take a look at David Cornsweet, I think he's massive now. Like, and I didn't realize, like, I saw workout pics of him, but the suit like hides a lot of that, which is a bit unfortunate for this suit. But yeah,
I really hope we get him like running in the rain in the.
I hope we get him. He's shirtless. He needs to find some clothes, and he steals some from an unwitting couple from their.
But he just can't
line.
find any, so he's gotta rough it.
he's got to run around with his bare hairy chest after saving people from an oil rig. Yeah, that is the discussion for this week. I think we are good. We talked about a lot. I think we did a great job of having a good conversation this week, guys. Round of applause to us.
We are great at this.
We're great at this, and we're getting better. And next week it'll be even better. I hope you all enjoyed the higher production quality this week. We tried to step it up, and we're gonna continue to level up our game. Next week, trust me, Crisis is gonna look crispy. And one day,
don't worry, guys. I'm getting
True.
a camera.
Yeah,
I'm getting a camera.
Confirmed. I know there are a lot of people in the chat worried about it, but it's happening.
Yeah.
We're gonna
The
have a
week
true
after
cam.
that, we're all gonna have suits on.
Yeah, we're gonna wear tuxes. When
That suit?
Superman
Oh,
comes out, we
right.
might have to come dressed right, unless the movie is terrible, in which case you will not see this podcast ever again.
Yeah,
And
to
we'll
be the
delete all evidence, and it
second
never
last episode.
existed. If that movie is
Yeah, so
bad,
download it
Trust
now so
me.
you have the receipts.
Oh,
It
We will
will-
deny it. It's
No,
AI.
that wasn't us. That was not
Yeah.
us. But
I'll be like,
thank
that
you,
guy's at least pounds lighter than me.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the third episode of the DCU Experience. We really appreciate it. For Crisis, Nick, and True, my name is Garrick. We will see you in the next episode next Thursday, where we will be talking all things Creature Commandos. We'll be going over the last episode, the finale. Super excited. Cannot wait. And then after that, it's nothing but Superman and rumors for 6 months, baby. Let's go. Thanks, everyone.